Welcome back to Bear Lake. I hope you're looking forward to hearing chapter 3 in Sam Barger's story. In chapter 2, Sam sets a trap line and catches a rabbit in a snare, his first adventure of catching wild game in the woods. But at the same time, he is confirmed and realizes that he has to move to Anchorage. Chapter 3. At the end of March, Joe left home for Anchorage. It was a quiet, casual departure, as if he was just going to the beach site for a couple of days, instead of moving out on his own to the city 200 miles away. Mom, Mary, and I were still on the porch, and the sound of his car had just faded when Art Mitkoff pulled up in his green Chevy pickup. He came in and sat at the table, as he often did on winter mornings, sipping his sweetened coffee while Mom worked. Mom started washing dishes, then worked restlessly across the kitchen to tin pans of rising bread. She had taken to baking bread again, the one thing she truly loved to do. There was even a touch of color back in her cheeks. Art rubbed his pant leg with a nervous hand. "Spring's out there somewhere," he said. "Soon be time to hang some new web." "John always said winter was for hanging web," said Mom. "Spring seems kind of late." Art had grown up in Inelchik. He was part Russian, part Dena'ina Indian, with his slick black hair and thin mustache. He had fished the beach beside us all of my life. "Yeah, John, he was always a little ahead of me on that one." That was his way. Mom leaned on her bread dough and took a deep breath. Art ran a handful of fingers through his hair and rubbed the back of his neck. "I gotta tell you," he said, "I don't like to see you sell off like this." Mom slammed a fist into her bread dough and turned to face him. "Art, I gotta sell the fish sites and go to Anchorage. There's no two ways about it. What am I gonna live on here? I can't fish, and I'm not about to put myself in a dory and pretend I know what I'm doing. It's not what I want, Art. I just don't see another way. We're keeping the land and the house, but the fish sites gotta go." Her chubby body seemed to sag in the dress that she wore. "Joe's already gone to Anchorage to get a construction job. Without him, fishing's out of the question, Art. You know I can't run the skiff, much less set a net. Sam here, he's eager, but he doesn't have the beef for it, and I can't afford to hire a hand. Those sites barely fed us as it was. And John still had to hire onto that oil exploration crew and go doodlebugging most every winter." "You know I'd help you," Art said. I could see his face as he imagined himself trying to keep his nets mended and in the water while he babysat the Barger clan. "Art, you're a doll, but face it, you can't hardly get around to your own work, much less help me." I could see that Mom had hurt his feelings, but she was right. Dad always said the only thing Art would work at was fishing, and sometimes even that got to be too much like work. I saw him look out the window and down the road like he hoped Dad would pull into the driveway. "I can take Joe's place in the skiff," I said. I took a seat at the table as if I was invited. "I could. I know how to run the motor. I can set the nets. Me and Mary, we could do it." Just saying it put a knot in my stomach, and I knew I was wasting my breath. There would be new faces in the rain gear at the beach this summer. Someone else would haul our gill nets off the rack and into the boats. Someone else would run the boats that pulled the nets out from shore. Someone else would have my bunk in the shack on the beach, where they'd sleep every chance they get, so they could awake at every change of tide to pick the fish from the nets, pull the nets out of the water, set the nets back in the water. Someone else would learn that days didn't matter, and by July they'd only know tides and openings and closings of the fishing period. Someone else would have that sweet odor of salmon fishing, the sweet ocean cologne of sand, salt, and fish, the smell that filled your pores until even a good hot bath wouldn't drive it out, and people could just tell by smelling you that you were a fisherman. Someone else would have that odor this summer. I wouldn't be there when the tide was running and the nets were bent in a bow. I wouldn't be mending the web, patching holes that let fish escape, costing us money. Dad would say, "No time to sleep when the net's in rags. Can't make money with a ragged net." I would just be a regular kid this summer. At a time I was ready to be more than a regular kid, to be a fisherman. I wanted to be in the bow of the dory when the surf was running and the waves were higher than Dad's head. That's the sea my mom feared. She believed she'd die in that water, and she was scared for me too. "You kids stay out of the boats," she insisted every spring when she took us to the beach cabin for the first time. "You fall in the water and you'll freeze to death in a minute." She passed her fears on to me with her lectures, and I avoided the water until the urge to be older and bolder just got too strong. It was as if her phobia finally pushed me toward the sea. The first calm day of 1964, I talked my way over the gunwale and into the open dory as it bobbed on the surf. I lay in the belly of a great sea creatures with ribs of spruce and skin of plywood, and the aroma of fish was like a drug that reeked of adventure. Mom came stomping down the beach from the cabin, yelling at Dad. "John Barger," she growled, "you know how I feel about those kids being out on the water." Dad was leaning on the gunwale, rocking with it up and down in the edge of the water. "I know," he said. "I also know what you're wrong. How are we supposed to be fishermen and sit on the beach?" I hung over the bow and looked at the sand as they fought. When the water was shallow, the land beneath it was bright and visible, and then surges of murky water came in, and I saw nothing. "Well, what if the boat tips? What if the motor stops or you spring a leak? What are you going to tell me then?" "I'm sorry, Arlene, but your kid drowned because we had to go fishing." Dad stomped off muttering, "Don't know why in the hell she even let him out of diapers. She wants them to be babies forever." I went out that day anyway, splashing through the meager waves of a sunny day, tasting salt water when it fell on our faces like rain, pretending I was helping when actually I just got in the way, pretending I was strong and able when I was weak and scared. Mom went home and tended her garden rather than pace the beach and watch her youngest baby porpoising around with the men who belonged out where the danger was. We approached the end of each net and lifted it on board. First the cork line, then the rest of the web and the lead line, and hopefully some fish. We pulled the boat along the net so it passed over one gunwale and then the other and back in the water to fish another tide. Some salmon were tangled and dead with the web choking them into grotesque shapes. That made me glad to see the live ones, held only by a single mesh at their gills, flashing silver torpedoes, turning more green-like on the bottom of the skiff. They piled up around our feet, sliding back and forth with the rock of the boat. "Strike her there," yelled Joe from the stern, and we looked up from the net to see a flashing tail thrashing in the cork line as a fresh salmon slammed into the wall of the net. I cheered. Another fish jumped south of the net, and I wondered as it leaped again, driving toward our net. It slammed in, splashing and thrashing. "Strike her," I cried. But the fish was small and squirted through to jump again north of the net. "Just a stupid humpy," sneered Joe. "How do you know? Humpies almost always squirt through. They're like you, too small to be worth anything." "All fish are money fish," Dad said. "Even little pinks, just like Sam here. He's kind of a humpy." He tousled my hair and laughed. He called me Humpy all that summer. Then everybody did. Humpy Barger. Good name for a fisherman, I figured. No one else in the family had a nickname, and I treasured it as my father's gift. I would be like I remembered him, standing spraddle-legged in the boat with the sleeves cut off at the elbow and patched rain pants hanging down over rubber boots, a scruffy beard and a battered dory, and the magic smell of salmon summer that I wouldn't have because my boat was empty. Leaving the beach was the first step in letting myself leave this place on Cook Inlet. These people in their log cabins and trailer houses, those woods full of mystery. The town I was leaving wasn't really a town at all. A person driving through to Nilchik would see a gas station, a cafe, and a couple of churches. The houses were strung out along the highway or hidden back in the woods on roads too muddy to drive most of the time in the spring. There were people there too, people with names and lives mixed with mine, kids I'd been babies with, like we were hairs on the same head. I knew people's trucks and jeeps and carryalls. I knew their skiffs and their winter coats. I knew which men smoked Camels or rolled their own Prince Albert. I knew who made the best sticky buns and the worst pie. All these important things wouldn't matter anymore, even Becky. Becky was the only girl in my class that looked like she might be a woman someday. All the others were gawky little girls with silly faces and skinny legs. But Becky filled out her jeans and her sweaters didn't lie flat on her chest. Right after Christmas, I got to sit by her during a movie about Holland. I wish I had a coat like that, I said, pointing to a boy in a blue short jacket like the kid in the paint cans. The kid on the paint cans. You'd be so cute, she teased. We giggled and she touched my arm. And with this kind of encouragement, I began to perform. I named each strange character after someone in town. It was the best of my 8th grade antics, and sitting with Becky in the dear dark was close to total perfection. After that day, she sat by me during school movies and gave me secret glances in class. She let me give her a piece of ivory that I found on the beach, and she wore it around her neck on a chain. When Dad died and I came back to school with everybody's looking at me feeling, she acted normal as ever. She and Harry Munson were the ones who just treated me same as every day. Harry was either my best friend or my worst enemy, depending on the day or even the time of day. He was born and raised in an Ilchik, but had some magic that made it seem like he was from somewhere else, somewhere far away enough to be unreal, somewhere like Seattle or California. He was tall and athletic, with natural waves to his hair, and he kept it combed like a high school boy. His clothes were from the catalog and not homemade or hand-me-down, and he wore loafers. Harry and I invented the game Run the Gauntlet, which made us leaders in the school, and we tended to swagger. Run the Gauntlet was a reenactment of a challenge used by the Iroquois and Huron Indians in my late-night readings. The captured warrior was given a chance of freedom by running between lines of angry people armed with fists and clubs and feet. The warrior had only to reach the end of the brutal line and run to freedom. It seemed the perfect game for us middle schoolers. We were playing our daily version of the game, and I was the captured warrior. I dashed along the narrow opening in the line, knocking down 2 7th graders right at the start. Bart and Jimmy scored good hits on my back. I was twisting and dodging my way to daylight when Harry stretched out a long leg and tripped me. I went down hard on the packed snow. The laughter and the jeers were part of the game. And when Harry leaned down to help me up, I saw Becky laughing with the others. By the way, Harry said, did I tell you Becky was at church last night? We held hands all through the slideshow about the preacher's visit to Jerusalem. The truth of it didn't matter to me or to him. Saying it, imagining it was enough. I came up swinging and caught Harry by surprise with a fist in the stomach. He nearly fell over and I pranced in front of him with my fist raised. Come on, you liar, I snarled. He stuck out his chin and charged. Liar, nobody calls me that. Any friendship between us melted in rage. We pushed and thumped and slugged until we were both dirty and out of breath. Finally, I threw one lucky punch that cost my best friend in the nose and drew blood. Our classmates were whooping and yelling, then grew silent. That's when I realized that the other kids were running for the school and the principal was running for us. I know losing a father is tough on a boy, said Mr. Morris, the fat principal staring at me over his glasses from behind his desk. But you've got to learn to sit on that anger and let things pass. I know these are rough times with your dad gone and all, but look at you, brawling with one of your pals like this. I looked at him confused and irritated, and my jutting lower jaw probably showed it. What did my fight with Harry have to do with Dad? He turned to Harry. Mr. Munson, I appreciate it if you would show some consideration for a grieving friend. You have got to understand that Sam needs us, each and every one of the people in his life, to help him get through this. He has enough challenges right now. Now, neither me nor Harry was sure what he was talking about, but it was obvious that we weren't getting in trouble. Mr. Morris shook his head in surrender and waved a tired hand. Go on now, get back to class. Let's have no more of this. Well, that afternoon we had another movie in class, Barges on the Rhine. Did you get in trouble? Becky whispered, leaning close so I could feel her hair brush my arm. No, but no thanks to you. Me? What did I do? We both jerked around when Mr. Scott paused mid-sentence and everyone stared at us. The dreary monologue about hauling coal and wheat through Europe on barges along the Rhine was all we could hear. Harry told me, I hissed. Told you what? About last night, you sitting with him in church. So, I waited a full 3 slide frames before I delivered the crushing blow. That's why I hit him. Fighting with Harry got me through the last couple months. Hardly a day went by that we didn't have some kind of shoving match, and sometimes they turned into full-blown fistfights. Of course, he said he won most of the fights, but Becky didn't give back the piece of ivory, and she didn't sit by him at any of the movies. Mr. Morris did a lot of coddling, patting me on the back and laying me off easy when I acted up in class. One time he held me in class during recess. He sat on the edge of the desk and fiddled with the crease in his pants. You know, Sam, I lost my dad too when I was very young. I know what you're going through. Yeah, well, at least you didn't have to go to his funeral. Huh? I don't understand. My grandpa did. He had to go to his son's funeral. Just seems kind of weird, that's all. I know he didn't understand. I probably made no sense when I said it. He just shook his head and nodded. He didn't speak to me again until the last day of school, and then he called me aside. Samuel, I have a gift for you, he said, handing me a book from one of those church publishers. I think he was glad to see the last of me when the final school bell rang and we all ran screaming into the sunlight of summer vacation. I never read the book, but I kept a card that Becky gave me. It was a Valentine with a red heart and a Cupid with wings, and she signed it, Your Girlfriend, Becky. That's the end of chapter 3, and hope you're looking forward to chapter 4. Thank you.